It's June the 13th. No, we're supposed to start at 6 today. This one is scheduled for 6. Yeah.
Some kind of bit.
Today is June the 13th, 2019. And as always, well, good evening, everybody. I'm looking at all these wonderful faces out there. How's everybody doing? Good, good, good. I'm looking for a young person. We haven't had many young people, so I'm having to pick some fake young people. Lorna's trying to hide behind that camera. So Lorna, and you are much younger than me or Sean, I'm sure. Right. So why don't you come on up here and give her some encouragement? Come on, Lorna. Uh-oh, it's about to go on Facebook. All right, here we go.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. There are no minutes, right, Madam Clerk, for us to approve. Speakers addressing an agenda item. I have Howard Eagle, and then Laurel. I always have a tough time with your last, what is it? Avery Detour. Is that right? I got it? Mr. Eagle? Everybody knows you have 3 minutes, and after the 3 minutes, the buzzer will sound. And by the way, my colleagues and I, we went to City Council and participated in the budget hearings. And as I'm sure some of you who've gone over there, you've seen how they do the time there. They have this big clock. I think I got a couple ideas. A big clock and a very obnoxious buzzer. So we may have to switch to that. But Mr. Eagle, you have 3 minutes, and go to it.
Good evening. When I review your resolutions in terms of expenditures, I'm always amazed. I saw something new this time, though. I saw a 9-part resolution, number 944, that amounts to nearly $356,000. I had never seen that before. You're very creative with finances, but that's not what I'm here to talk about this evening. I actually stopped by to give you all copies of a letter that has been sent to one of your colleagues, one of your missing colleagues tonight. And I wanted to read this letter into the record of this meeting, and then I'll leave copies for you all with the special assistant. So the letter is from my attorney, Mr. Jeffrey Wicks, PLLC, attorney and counselor at law, and it is addressed to Ms. Beatrice LeBron, Commissioner, Rochester City School District Board of Education. The letter reads, Dear Ms. LeBron, please be advised that this office represents Howard Eagle in regards to comments made in public by you about him. If you are represented by Carl, our counsel, on this matter, please do not read any further and turn this letter immediately over to your attorney. It has been alleged by Mr. Eagle that you have made several slanderous comments about him in public and on the radio. Specifically, Mr. Eagle alleges that you have publicly accused him of, quote-unquote, bullying women, which is not true. He alleges that you have publicly accused him of harassing you and, quote-unquote, cyberbullying you, which is not true. Most egregiously, my client reports to me that you have alleged something on a recent radio program that not only is untrue, but is beyond the bounds of civility. He alleges that you accused him of making a comment that you and fellow Rochester City School District Board member Melanie Fuentes were bent over, quote unquote, bent over, quote, taking it up the butt, or words to that effect. Needless to say, my client never made such a remark. All of the above-mentioned allegations constitute defamation. Accordingly, it is my directive to you that you cease and desist from all such conduct, including any untrue public statements whatsoever regarding Mr. Eagle. Failure to do so will result in my advice to my client to pursue any and all legal remedies up to and including a lawsuit for defamation. So I'll leave copies for you with the special assistant. Thank you and have a nice evening.
Thank you, Mr. Eagle. Laurel, you're next. Excuse me. Give it to the clerk, please. No worries, no worries.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
It's nice to see you
Thank
guys, and I appreciate having a few minutes of your time. I'd like to read a letter that was shared on April 8th, 2019. Dear Chief Schiavi, in 2017, our school-based planning team here at Roberto Clemente interviewed possible candidates for the principal position pending the planned retirement of me. Our school-based planning team unanimously ranked Ms. Thompson as a candidate whose vision for teaching and learning aligned with ours here at RC8. Unexpectedly, I decided to delay my retirement in an effort to facilitate our school's positive trajectory out of receivership. Ms. Thompson chose to transfer into School Aid as a partner in our endeavor. She became fully immersed as the assistant principal in support of students, families, and staff during the impending administrative transition. As assistant principal, Ms. Thompson has been a strong advocate and committed partner. This is evidenced by her support of all students, their families, and staff. Her expertise in the area of special education has allowed for Roberto Clemente to meet the increasing and sensitive needs of our most vulnerable and often underrepresented children. Ms. Thompson has adopted the RCSD's motto, educating the whole child, and is deeply dedicated to the holistic growth and success of our family. Ms. Thompson continues to have the unanimous support of the Roberto Clemente school staff. We are asking you to strongly consider our recommendation to transition Assistant Principal Thompson to the role of principal at Roberto Clemente School Number 8. With all respect, we would really appreciate your support, and we thank you for your attention to this detail. Thank you, and it is signed by all of our RTA members. It is a unanimous document that is also signed by our building committee and our school-based planning team. We've been working to try to transition me for 2 years now, and I've loved every minute. But I tell you, if I pull back my retirement now, my husband will divorce me, and I will drive you all crazy, I promise, okay? So please and thank you. Do your very best work to help support us, and I'm grateful for the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
RCA, thank you. Rotarians, thank you.
Thank you. We don't have any speakers addressing an item not on the agenda, so we'll move to Dr. Nelm's report. Sean?
Okay. I think we're looking for communications to cue me up. Ms. Washington, would you? Yep, go ahead. Thank you.
I'll grab it.
Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. All right, so I'm going to do a brief report. I promised the board that I would try to be as brief as possible, and so I will hold to that. Just as like every June, I give a brief summary of the year's work and try to not make any predictions, even though Van will force me to do so at some point, around graduation rates. And so this is a number of slides for you to dig into a little more deeply, but I'll start with the first here, which is our grad rates. I think what's important to note here is that last year's graduation rate in June, that's the bar in the purple, second from the far right, if we're all looking, was at 51.7%, and we anticipate this June's rate to be 61.1%, so it's about a 10 percentage point jump between last June and this June. By the end of last year, meaning August, which is in the yellow, we did reach a graduation rate of 61.1%. And we anticipate that this year's August rate will be somewhere between 65 and 68%, depending on how many students finish strong going into August. So that's your prediction, Van. All right. Okay, all right. The trends for dropout, this is a chart that we have tracked very, very closely. And it has a lot to do with multiple factors, attendance being one, chronic absenteeism, supporting students as freshmen, and so forth. And so the yellow line on the far left represents East in 2014 prior to the EPO, where you saw the number of dropouts being greater than the graduation rate. And these data points are why the state asked the U of R or another entity to intervene and to support and be creative. And then you see those lines slowly shift. And so you'll see the graduation rate last year at 61 and the dropout rate declining. Again, we expect the yellow line, the dropout rate, to continue to head in the right direction, which is down, and graduation to go up. But that visual is the first time we actually created this particular visual, and I really enjoy looking at it because it really shows where the intersection of the work, where it began and how it continues to move forward. For our attendance rate, we had the pleasure this morning of meeting with a group of individuals at RCSD, Causewave, and from East to try to figure out, how to address our greatest challenge, which is attendance, and particularly chronic absenteeism, which is a huge component of the new federal regulations for achievement. And I'll just draw your attention to 2016-17, where you saw the chronic absenteeism rate, the far right, at 66%. That is, just to remind the board, that's the year that we work with the state to have our attendance accurately reflect the students that we had in our school. If you recall, for many years, we had kids on the books at East who hadn't attended for 2 or 3 years. So you see that number being accurate around who actually was attending or not attending East. And so between the intervention from 16-17 to now, we've seen a 22 percentage point drop in chronic absenteeism. And this morning we had the pleasure to share that information with the attendance department here at the RCSD, and some researchers from U of R helped to discuss and consider ways in which we might move forward in addressing absenteeism, but particularly chronic absenteeism. And that 44% is a combined rate between upper school and lower school. I want to bring you got a question? I see you looking at. Go ahead, Willa.
Thank you. Sorry for interrupting. Next year, your upper school will be made up entirely of students who have been with you since the beginning.
Correct.
Sixth grade?
Actually, this school year is the first cohort of kids who've gone through all 4 years. Yep.
So my question is, can we expect to see 89 to 90% average daily attendance going forward rather than the 84%? Is the culture shifted?
That is always my expectation. I can tell you that, every year we learn more and more, and you see that shift from 16, 17 to now where we have students who are being more open about the reasons why they are not attending. I'll give you one example without naming the student's name. We had a young person who was missing many days of school, and we continued to work with he and his family, and they finally revealed to us, because they didn't want to talk about it because it's their personal business, that there was a newborn baby in the home, and he's a young father. And so it shifted our support from being, the 10-day letter and the counselor going and doing home visits to connecting with Monroe County Services and their child care division to support he and the child's mother. And so as we get to know our students and build relationships, they're more open about the impediments of their success, and we're able to connect them with the right resources. And every kid needs a different resource. And there are some students who were much older and decided that the physical place of school wasn't the right place for them. So we partner with communities, with Freedom School for those type of students. So as we get to know our students and our families, and they feel more comfortable sharing some of the obstacles, we're able to better support them. So it is my hope that we have that number, daily attendance go up and chronic absenteeism go down, but it is our greatest challenge. So I would expect it, but I can't promise it. Yep. I also want to bring attention to the East community and the larger community, some of the programming that's happening this summer. We have teachers going through a pretty intensive, they continue to the second summer we've done this, looking at culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy, and it's a summer workshop where teachers understand more about themselves and their students And through the use of literature, we have Dr. Sonia James Wilson, who's done work in this community and nationally to support this endeavor. It's an intense writing camp, and it's something that I would love for the board and others to observe. I had a chance to sit through it last summer, and it was incredible to watch teachers think about their own thinking and their own bias and using art and literacy to express themselves and to reflect throughout the year. The support continues throughout the year. For students, we have, for parents rather, we have a summer training institute. This is focused on parents or students who are transitioning from 8th to 9th grade to help them understand the rigors of high school, what it means to have credits, what is the college and career standards in terms of outcomes, and how to better engage using the family and community or FACE committee to have their voices heard. That image we have there was a group of parents that we sent to Cleveland to receive national training around parental advocacy and their rights. For students, we have our summer programming. This is led by Lorna Washington and her team around It's a Step to College. If you recall, this is the second year we're gonna have about 60 students on a college campus for 2 weeks and then mentoring throughout the school year to track their progress towards college or career. And in our third year, this will be an opportunity that will be extended to the entire RCSD. We look forward to working with the cabinet to identify students who may want to engage in this process throughout the year. And we hired a dynamic director to do this work. It's fully funded by the Conar Foundation to support students in their process and progress towards college. And her name is Ashley Cross. She's a phenomenal asset in this community, and she has already hit the ground running with our students and our families. And I want to thank the board for their continued support, and that completes my report.
Wow. There is a couple, Dan, you taking notes? I hope Terry's watching.
That's right.
Mr. Superintendent, I just,
Yes.
I'm talking to Darren right now, I'm sorry. But, on another point, what I was getting ready to say is that I had leaned over to Van and said
Yep.
that he may beat my time tonight for me, so we'll see.
Now watch, she gonna filibuster just to use some time. Go ahead.
Just a couple of questions. One is that on your, on the slide 3, where it's projected that there will be a 61% graduation rate and the dropout rate is 23%. What happened to the remaining 16%?
Yep, so they continue as year 5 and 6th grade. So you can graduate in years, 5 years and 6 years, so they're
Okay.
still enrolled in the system the following year.
Okay. What,
Yep.
and on slide 4,
Yep.
what does ADA mean?
Yep,
as a
average
power-
daily attendance is ADA, I apologize for that, and chronic absenteeism.
Okay.
So this, yep.
All right. And I may break my rule with you tonight, so you owe me dinner. I looked at, usually what I do is, I don't vote on those additional pay resolutions, but tonight, I'm going to vote. You owe me dinner.
You pick whatever you, hey, hold on.
It's on the record now.
I'm gonna shut up if I mess it up.
That's it. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much, Dr. Nelms. We're good there. Let's see, EPO financial report? No,
No.
no report? Okay. Review of cohort data. So, my understanding is that Ray was not feeling well.
Ray's hurt, but
Ray's hurt, but we got somebody.
we have an even better replacement.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ray does apologize. Unfortunately, he is ill tonight, and he wasn't able to make it, so I'm filling in for him. My name is Rob Alleman, and I work in the Office of Accountability. And what I will be presenting to you is our projections for the June 2015 cohort graduation. If you turn to the very first page, it just briefly provides you with what the criteria is that we look at when we do the June projection. There's essentially 2 different data sets that we look at. The first data set is students that have 16 or more credits. That is based on our ASAP policy, which is our academic standards policy. In addition to that, we also look at students that have 3 or more passing exam scores. And the 3 or more passing exam scores would include your CTE exams, CDOS option 1, option 2, as well as the low pass option for students that are eligible for a low pass on their Regents exam scores. If you could turn to the next page, this is the same type of information that was provided in the marking period 2 update. It's just provided now with marking period 3 results. Over on the left-hand side, there is a cone, at the bottom of the cone, it shows you 16 credits and 3 passing exam scores. That would be the projected June graduation rate at 56.3% for the 2015 cohort. If you go over to the right-hand side, the projection for the 2014 cohort at that point in time was 60.4, and then the actual was at 53.5%. So the expectation is for our June 29 graduation rate, it will exceed last year's June graduation rate of 53.5%, and it will actually also exceed the projected graduation rate of 55.3%. And just as an aside, last year, the June projection graduation rate was at 54.3%. So that has increased as well for this year.
Can I ask a question? Can you help me to understand it a little bit better, and particularly for our viewing audience that may not understand it? So the 56.3 number is what?
The 56.3% would be students that have 16 or more credits and
Okay.
3 or more passing exam scores. That's a June projected graduation rate. If you move up to the 60.1%, that's looking at students that have 3 or more passing exam scores. And part of the reason why that's placed there is that we're noticing that as students have more flexibility in graduating, we're leaning closer towards that projection for a criteria for a graduation rate of the 60.1, but not yet. So for example, last year, we had 54.3% as our June projected graduation rate. The actual, okay, great, thank you. The actual projection graduation rate was 53.5%. So we typically see a 3 to 4% variance from what the projected rate is. Right? The following slide provides the same type of scenario, but what this does is it provides you with the information including East and excluding East. So you can see what is the impact of having East with our district and having East without the district. So if you look at on the left-hand side, it has the same type of format. At the bottom, it'll give you the 16 or more earned credits and 3 or more passing exam scores, and at the top it shows you if we're looking at just 3 passing exam scores. 56.3% is the June projected graduation rate, including East. If you move over to the right in that first 2 cones, there's a 1.3% difference. If we exclude East, it would lower it to 55.2%. And then what it does is it compares it to the 2014 cohort, so you can see a comparison from last year to this year.
Okay.
Hey, Rob, I think what might be helpful for the board to possibly see too is you have to also show that East no longer has a negative impact on the district. So you look at that, I think that's something that is a data point that may not be understood. So 4 years ago, the graduation rate would have been much lower using East because it didn't have a graduation rate that was above the district average. I just want to make sure that's clear too. So the impact is not comparing it this way, it's comparing the negative impact it had on the district.
So what this is doing is it's including the total cohort membership numbers in the district's total, and it's taking away the 170 total cohort members at the time this was calculated from East. So it's simply including and excluding. So it's simply looking at the numbers.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate that clarity, because I know when I first looked at it, it was confusing to me too, and I said I thought the impact was much greater. Then I looked at 4 years ago when we were included, how I wouldn't say the drain, but how it negatively impacted the overall graduation rate. So we're at a point now where we're not negatively impacting the graduation rate, and that's just a different way of understanding the data.
Yep, very good point.
Yeah, thanks.
And then on the very last slide, it's a lot of numbers, but it provides you with what the total cohort membership is, including East, excluding East. It'll also give you the numbers for those students that have earned 16 or more credits. It provides you with the numbers for those students that have 16 or more credits, and in addition to that, they have their pre-passing exam scores, as well as what the dropout numbers are after the end of marking period 3. What's notable in the slide is if you go to the bottom of the slide, looking at the plus and minus for the projections, if you look at the table with the row with the 16 or more credits, or if you look at the row with the 16 credits and 3 or more passing exam scores, or if you look at the dropout rate for including or excluding East, they both show a positive impact in terms of the numbers have increased of students that are meeting these different criteria, as well as the percentage of those numbers have increased. So it's moving in a very nice direction.
Okay. Rob, two things. One is that our number is, with East or without it, our number's going up, which is very important to all of us. The second piece is, how does the August graduation rate fit into this?
So the August graduation rate is not figured into this. However, over the past 5 years, our graduation rate with August has increased by 4 to 5%. It'll depend on the success of summer school.
So in terms of, I know, did we reduce resources to our summer program? And would that have an impact
For
on-
this summer, you
Yes.
mean? No, not
Okay.
for the seniors or anybody
Okay.
that's close to graduating.
All right, thank you.
But it's important to know that if we get to 4 or 5%, almost either way, we'll be close to 70%, if I'm doing my math correctly. At the high end, yeah.
Yeah, it's looking very promising. And then what this also doesn't take into account is students have the opportunity to submit an appeal process.
What's the
Which I'll-
percentage of that? Sorry.
I don't have that off the top of my head. I can tell you at the moment, I probably have a stack like this
Okay.
of appeals. And then that will only increase the graduation rate if those students also meet the other requirements.
All right.
So it's looking very promising.
And again, we're not stopping there. Our next move is to 80% and so on. So either those who are optimistic, pessimistic, and all that, the numbers are what the numbers are. And it looks like that even without East, and we wish Sean the best, is we're close to 70% on our own.
Yeah, I think it's like 65. Yeah,
65, right.
65, yep, with August. But that's a great pace, and if I might just add the comment that many of us made many years ago, and it's not something any of us made up, but what gets measured gets done. And I think the district has done a better job at that in the last 2 or 3 administrations. And I know, Dan, you were here before, you're here now, Linda, you were here before. But progressively, and a number of superintendents have, and the board, of course, have helped us keep our eye on the prize. So, and to be quite honest, and I just said this to someone, the mayor is calling for a referendum in November, and what is significant, and I'm a lawyer, I think about evidence. It's not what I say, it's what we do. And the data will point that out pretty strongly. So if this referendum is done in November, those that are proponents of changing the system will have to be confronted not with someone's position or their narrative, but the facts. And the facts, I think, will suggest that over the course of a number of good and competent superintendents and a committed Board of Education, we've weathered the storm, and we are getting our children closer to that goal of where they need to be. So let me just say this evening, but I could have levied this thanks to any number of people who've been in these positions, but Rob, you've been in this position for a number of years. Thank you for the diligent work and being focused on measuring the outcomes. Because I think in the end, if there is, and far be it from me or anybody up here for telling city council how to do their job. If they want to do a referendum, they can do a referendum. We can't tell them how to do their job, no more than they should be telling us how to do our job. But if they choose to do a referendum, I believe the citizens will be confronted with the facts. And you have done an admirable job, and you and many other people, I'm sure, Ray, have done an admirable job in providing citizens with facts. They can do with them what they want, but we appreciate you being diligent, and of course, Dan and your entire team, the chiefs. This doesn't just happen. You're reporting on data, right? But there are people, including chiefs and deputy superintendents, and principals and teachers and cafeteria people and custodians who are making this happen. So on behalf of the board, thank you, and anybody who's listening, thank you for giving the community the evidence that they will need to make an informed decision, if that's the case in November.
Thank you.
Commissioner, I'm sorry, Dan, Commissioner Powell?
Thank you. I just want to underscore what you just said while Rob is at the podium. I know that he produces the finish line reports that we see when we go to our Wednesday visits to the schools, and those are very valuable, holding the principals' feet to the fire. Sometimes we, when we show them the numbers, there's some obfuscation and dithering over what the numbers mean, and, oh, no, that's a data problem. We on the board know that's not a data problem. We on the board know that that's a leadership problem when the numbers are not what we want to see. And thank you for providing the data so that we can hold people accountable.
No, thank you. I'm proud to be a part of a team. Thanks.
Commissioner Davis?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'll
No,
get you
no.
next. Sorry.
Well, we were going to blame you, Rob, but no. And certainly as superintendent for 5 months, I didn't affect these numbers either. It's really to the administrators, teaching staff, and the students themselves. It starts way back in 9th grade, and we're still not there. There's still several hundred kids that haven't made it across the finish line, but we're moving in the right direction, and I think as we set our sights next, it should really be 70 to 80%. And it'll get tougher as the last few, but that's where we should be, and it would parallel with some of our suburban neighbors too.
Sorry. Yep, definitely. Absolutely.
This isn't necessarily to East only, but to the district. Do we keep any post-graduation stats? Like, do we know what % of those who have graduated are career and college ready? Do we keep stats like that?
So there's the National Student Clearinghouse, which provides some of that data depending on what college a student attends. In terms of college and career readiness, there are reports that come out through MCC and I believe RIT.
And I assume the natural follow-up question is, do we track that data?
So for the National Student Clearinghouse, yes, absolutely. I think for MCC with their reports, it's something that we're aware of. I don't know if we necessarily track that and do trend data with it.
RIT, do they just send us information?
It'd be the same thing. They just show you the number of students are using what particular courses.
Do you know off the top of your head what the numbers were in RIT?
I don't.
I'm curious. I'm sure that's what you were thinking.
Yeah, I'd like to know. If we have sample reports from previous years, just like to understand what kind of post-graduation data is collected.
Commissioner Hallmark?
What would be useful to know would be the numbers of students in the Transitional Studies Department at MCC, because those are the students who need to level up.
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks.
I just wanted to point out, and I remember when Deputy Superintendent Atul was here, when we talked about the strategy for our students, that if students know that if they are able to pass one Regents, and there was another point with that. So I just want to make sure, and I'm just saying it to our district, that we make sure that we are informing our 9th graders about that, because I think that if they understand that they can be strategic, then that's going to be motivational to them. So I think that that's something that we need to keep in mind and continue to do that they know what they have to. If we really make our students and families a significant partner in this, and they know what they need to do in order to graduate, I think that's going to be a motivating factor for them. Thank you.
And on this data point of college readiness, in the scheme of things, it's a relatively, at least from my observation, a relatively new data point. It's not, people weren't talking about that 10 years ago. All we were talking about is making sure we get kids to graduate. It's an important data point. And again, I would repeat this notion that what gets measured gets done. So we should be very aggressive about understanding where those kids are to the extent that we can get that information. But I also want our community to be very cautious about this. We have a tendency, distressed communities in particular, not just Rochester, to, once people reach a certain point of progress, say, well, what about that? Well, you didn't do this. So we have to be very careful, because my guess is, from what I've heard, that the data, because we've not been following it, that data point, we've not been measuring it, we probably haven't been as good about making sure that our kids, for example, are college ready. I'm just saying that's an important data point, but I don't want it to be used as ammunition to knock our kids down, and our teachers down, and our principals down, and our administrators down, once that data becomes the focus of our concern, because that can happen. Right. And I'm very concerned, because I hear people, as soon as we've been wallowing in 30%, 40% for close to a decade, or 5-6 years. And people would say, look at the graduation, look at the graduation rate, look at the graduation rate. And as soon as we start moving that bar, we start moving that ball, they start saying, well, what about this? And this is important, but we have to remember people build hope from progress. And I'm hoping that the focus on other data points, it won't have the result of defeating that progress that, as you said, Dan, lots of people, not sitting up here, have worked really hard on. I just want to, so you should be measuring that. I should speak to the superintendent, I'm sorry. You all should be measuring that, but not with the goal of finding some evidence that all this work that people are doing is not really working. I've seen, I call them problem pimps. There are people out there that will do that. And we, at our point of development, I don't think we can take another hit like that. We should celebrate our success.
So beginning with this year with the new accountability system, Every Student Succeeds Act, one of the data measures is the College and Career Civic Readiness Index. So beginning this year and going forward, we'll be able to do trends of that data in comparison to the Big Five, to other districts, as well as New York State.
And the state has a universal identifier for students when they start. So we've gotten better at tracking our kids from kindergarten on. And that'll continue. And what Commissioner Davis said is really true, that we've got to look beyond just tracking our kids to graduation. That not that we're the only ones responsible, but we need to know whether the kids went to college, did they finish it? Did they get a job after that? Have our kids who didn't go to college gotten jobs and all that? Because as the adults in the system, it's our responsibility to make sure that somebody is catching up with all those kids.
What's interesting about the transition, I remember a few years ago, the district went to an online credit recovery system. And I remember my first thought was, if all these kids in front of computers not going to get the work. And then you look at the college system right now, most courses are hybrid. You sit for some of the courses, and some of the courses are online. And so, without even knowing it, RCSD was ahead of the game in getting kids acclimated to online credit recovery. And there are a number of students, I know at East, I'm sure throughout the district, who are benefiting from that towards graduation. I mean, a ton of kids are coming on Saturdays and coming in the evenings and working at their own pace. And it's been, I don't know who started that program, but I know OCR has been an incredible resource for us.
But
so it's a huge investment.
that's, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but I think that's where we're moving into this century where it's not education, primary, secondary education as usual. It's not business as usual. And as our technology changes, I think we're going to have to catch up with what we do in the classrooms. And just, to the point about your dropout rate. Those kids are not just dropping out to be dropping out. There's some issues, and you expressed, an example of what are some of the concerns. Now, how do we work with that student or students similar, So it's not just about them having to be inside the classroom. That's not the 21st century. And so we're going to look at, well, they're not here, they're absent, but what else is going on? Some of you may have seen on Facebook, for example, this one little girl, student, who I think she had 2 babies, one in one arm, one on the floor, but she was still doing her work. Or some women have been in delivery. and they've been doing, homework and trying to graduate. And so we just have to look at how, how we reconfigure what we do and have the mindset that it particularly, and I think it will teach us something, that if we learn how to work with those, and not the ones that may be 56 year to graduate, although those included, but those who want to graduate, but life is getting in the way, and how can we support that? We haven't gotten there yet, but we certainly need to look at how do we develop strategies for that.
Commissioner LeBron?
Yeah, so first of all, I apologize for being late. I was in the building, but I was presenting to some students, but then I had to do some other stuff downstairs. So I want to apologize for that. So I hate to interject and throw myself in this conversation, but I am one of those folks that prefers to talk about college readiness and career readiness data versus the graduation rate. And I don't think that it's necessarily a negative thing to look at all the data points. I'm grateful to hear you say that Every Student Succeed Act is going to require us to start tracking that data. I'd be interested to see what we as a school board and Thierry coming in as a superintendent will do with that data. What does that mean for us and our students, and what are we planning to do? But I just want to also address, I've been talking to some folks at MCC because I am personally interested in what happens when students graduate from the district and whether they drop out or not. Years ago, MCC used to, and financial aid in the federal government don't allow this anymore, but you could have dropped out of high school, took the AccuPlacer, if you scored a certain score, they would allow you to come in, you would do your GED, and you can get college credit, and then you can go on and get your college degree. So they used to allow students to do that. They don't do that anymore. So I'm very curious to know what happens after, right? They drop out. If they don't have a GED, do they end up in a GED program? I went to Oasis graduation yesterday. There were tons of students graduating with a GED, and a lot of them, I was talking to them, were at one point students in the district, and they ended up at Oasis, who partners with the community place for their test education. But I'm just very curious on how we can start collecting that data and looking at that. I also, I'm talking with MCC specifically because I am interested in what AccuPlacer scores come back for all of our students when they graduate from here. And I know that they keep score of AccuPlacers for all students coming in, but I would like them to specifically, and we're not there yet, but a way to identify potentially what school they came from, and also where their scores were at and where they're getting placed, and how many, on average, are they getting more transitional study courses than our kids in the suburbs. I've heard people say this, but there is no data compiled and collected, and so I am working to pull that data up because I am interested in presenting that data to my fellow commissioners. But it also brings me back to when I was at Oasis yesterday, just looking at the history of what the state has done in adult education. And they consider Oasis an adult education program, even though it serves 16 and up. So they've cut the funding, which in turn the district has then cut funding for Oasis because we don't have the funding stream and revenue that we used to for that program. But in reality, it's a program that is really successful and that we should be funding, but we don't have the fundings because we don't get the state reimbursement. And I would like this board to also look at adult education. And although we are responsible for pre-K through 12, I feel like we as a board should still be saying, this is the impact on some of our students that have not been successful, and this is the programs that we want to support and push the state to start funding and refunding adult education. That's all.
I just wanted to say, and sort of piggyback on Dr. Nelm's point, I'm one of the more senior members up here, and I am blessed to have 3 children. And one went to SUNY Buffalo, that's my oldest. And then my middle one went to Temple, and my youngest just did her first year at Hampton. And watching their careers in college, it is amazing how the technology has changed. I never thought of it like that before. But to the extent we prepare children who are going to college now, I don't know about anybody else who's got kids in college, but my youngest, it's all about doing it online. They even have classes where they're still doing it online. So it really, it's not the cheap way out, it's not the quick fix. It really is preparing people. I'm just shocked at how much she's doing online. I never thought of it like that, but if we're offering quality coursework in that regard, it's preparing our kids, really is. Any other questions or comments? All right, now we'll move on to the consideration of resolutions. I need a motion to discuss resolutions 930 to 931.
So moved.
Been moved by Commissioner Hallmark, seconded by
Second.
Vice President Elliott. Any questions or comments regarding the EPO resolutions?
I just want to make sure I get my dinner.
Okay. Where you taking it? Come on, I'll put you on the spot.
Just saying.
I like the revelry,
Revelry? I never.
It's my choice.
wherever you want to go.
Okay, all right. Any other questions or comments other than where Vice President Elliott's going to be taking the dinner? Oh, yes, ma'am, go
I'd
ahead.
like to make a comment, but it's not necessarily just about East. It's about, we're one district. It's about the district as a whole. I did meet with HCI to talk about tenure, to try to understand how it works, and learn that educators, administrators are judged on their ability to deliver the content of the various subject matters that we have. And since in 2019 and 20, we're looking to move to a racial equity focus, and this is something I shared with Superintendent Nelms and Superintendent Lowengaard yesterday, I believe, is there a way to companion observing the district? That includes board members, deputy chief superintendents. How can we measure or assess our racial equity perspective from the perspective as board members, from the perspective as superintendents, deputy chiefs, administrators, and educators? And so that was something that I was uplifting, because when we look at the work of Dr. Joy DeGruy that our Victorious Minds Academy is following, from her work, she has shared that children in urban areas have display vacant esteem, and they display ever-present anger, and they display a racist socialization. And somewhere inside, our students it's still communicated to our students while they're learning 2 + 2 is 4, while they're learning 4 × 8 is 32, while they're learning the content, somehow also it's still being communicated through our institutions that African American children and Latino children are inferior to white children. So at the same time that, I think she calls it, there's poison in the cookies. So at the same time that our children are going through education, also the institution is communicating that the African American identity or the Latino identity is not as valuable as their white counterpart. So I like to see that when we go into the 1920 year where we say we're going to have a racial equity focus, I like to see, is there a way that we can assess our racial perspective from our different departments and the kind of culture and climate that we are creating in the classroom, in the school building, in central office. So what I find difficult in approving tenure of various departments and individuals is I don't have a way to measure their racial equity lens. What's provided to us is their ability to deliver content, but I don't have measures to look at what's our ability to address a racial equity lens in our classroom, school buildings, central office, everything from the board down. So I'd like to see us think about that and talk about that, ways of assessing that particular lens.
I would respond to that. What is the work of the real team? Because I would think that the real team would take a look at that and make some recommendations to this board.
Yes, that will be, and that will be coming in July. There'll be a
Okay.
presentation
All
from
right.
the real team.
Okay, so that's something that the real team, I believe, in my estimation, could support us in, and to make a recommendation about what a tool looks like. And so if that's something that's going to come in July, I look forward to seeing that.
So, Van, I just
Yes,
want
Commissioner LeBron.
to second what Commissioner Elliott is saying, and I also just want to add that any recommendations that legal also gets a chance to review it, even before it comes to the board, I just don't want a presentation of something that we cannot do because of Taylor law or any other laws or tenure laws. I just want to make sure, and I'm open to recommendations as long as they follow the law. Just want to throw that out there.
Any other questions or comments? All right. There being no further questions or comments, all those in favor of resolutions 930 to 931, say aye. Aye.
And for myself, it'd be a no.
There's one no, and you got a really hearty, aggressive aye from Vice President Elliott. Did you record that? Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
That's right. There's nothing more to do. That's right. It's a wrap.
I know he's glad to hear that, because, you know, I bought him all the time.
It took me
so.
4 years. I'm loving it. I'm loving this song.
I know, man. I know.
All right, we got to come back down to reality. And I need a motion to discuss resolution 933. It's been moved by Commissioner Powell, seconded by Commissioner LeBron.
933.
Any questions or comments regarding that resolution? There
That's
being-
the additional pay resolutions, right?
No, that's it.
Special ed.
To a 10-year area. It's page 2.
Oh, yes. I just did put it on my notes. Okay. Thank you.
I just have one
Yes, ma'am.
question.
Sure.
I saw his name in several locations. Is he receiving tenure and then he's taking an appointment for a year or something?
So when this is confusing, I got a question before this board meeting. So if the administrators at East, when they first join us, if they are already an administrator in the district, they come over, if you would say, on loan. So they're there for a year, and then in their second year, their tenure starts in a new category within their bargaining unit. So he was actually appointed last year as an interim, and this kind of converts that from interim to a permanent in this position. You'll also see Marlene Blocker, for example, on the resolution. She's been administrator in the district for over 20 years. But when she came to East as its principal, it's a different tenure area within ASAR, the bargaining unit for the administrators. And so she's up for tenure, so it may seem confusing because she's been in tenure here for about 15 or 20 years, but it's more of a formality than anything that is concerning. Yep.
Any further questions regarding 933? There being no further questions, all those in favor of EPO Resolution 933, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
No for me.
Got that, Madam Clerk? All right, I need a motion to discuss Resolution 938.
So
Been
moved.
moved by Commissioner Hallmark, seconded by Commissioner Powell. Any questions or comments regarding EPO Resolution 938? There being no questions, all those in favor of Resolution 938, say aye.
Aye.
Need a motion to discuss resolutions?
No for me.
Oh, and one no? I'm
It's a
sorry.
resignation.
Oh, it's a oh, no, it's fine. It's a resignation.
All right, so that was unanimous.
So it's unanimous.
938 was unanimous. I need a motion to discuss Resolution 942 to 944.
Second.
Commissioner Powell, seconded by Vice President Elliott. Any questions or comments to Dr. Nelms regarding 942 to 944? There being no questions or comments, all those in favor of Resolution 942 to 944, say aye.
Aye.
And no for me.
Got that, Madam Clerk? All right, I need a motion to discuss human capital. Can't even get out.
I'm second that one.
Moved and seconded by Commissioner LeBron, moved by Vice President Elliott. Any questions or comments regarding Resolution 945?
Oh, I thought that was the, did we pass the additional?
Yeah,
pay
we
rate?
passed the
Oh,
additional
okay.
pay.
So, no, I wasn't saying that for that
Oh,
one.
there's
I was
another
saying
one.
that for the additional
for-
pay.
yeah.
Yeah, but,
You still gonna second it?
yes.
Yeah, okay,
yes,
all right.
yes,
So any questions or comments regarding 945?
Yes.
All right, all those in favor of Resolution 945, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
And no for me.
I need a motion to discuss Resolution 946, authorization of additional pay. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Made by Commissioner LeBron, seconded by Commissioner Powell. Any questions or comments regarding the additional pay resolutions in 946? There being no questions or comments, all those in favor of Resolution 946, say aye. Aye.
No
And no
to
for me.
these resolutions, additional pay resolutions. But I'm supporting Sean's resolution.
Okay.
Maybe Beth need to buy me dinner.
All right, so now we turn to Resolution 947. That is the suspension appeals. You all were given the summaries for these. She's upholding the superintendent's decision. Of course, we can go into executive session on these. We do have to go into executive session anyways, but we don't have to discuss these unless there are questions regarding these disciplinary proceedings. Are there any questions?
I don't have a question, but can we carve out one? Or,
To talk about it in executive?
no, not to talk about, but I would say I would vote a certain way for 3 of them, but not.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, which number hearing file?
231 would be
231.
different for the first.
So why don't, if there's a motion that we carve out hearing 231 and call it 947A. Is there a second to that motion, Commissioner Powell? That motion has been made. All those in favor of calling out hearing number 231 and calling it 947, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, so now before you, there is Resolution 947, which includes hearing file 148, 184, 185, and 190. I need a motion to discuss. It's been moved by Vice President Elliott, seconded by Commissioner LeBron. Any questions or comments regarding those particular hearing suspension files? There being no further questions or comments regarding those files in Resolution 947, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? The ayes have it. I need a motion to discuss Resolution 947A. It's been moved by Commissioner Davis, seconded by
Second.
Commissioner Hallmark. Any questions or comments regarding Resolution 947A, which now includes hearing file 231? There being no questions or comments, all those in favor of Resolution 947A say aye. Aye.
And I have no for that one.
And you got the no. Kalia, if you're watching or listening, you can go home.
Yeah, have a good night. We
Kalia does
appreciate
by
you.
the way,
She's
yeah, we
downstairs
appreciate
watching.
you, Kalia. She does a great job at this work.
And can we have Sean always sit there for these meetings?
Does sort of move
'Cause
things
this-
along a little
This
bit.
appears to work.
Steve, we got to up our game.
I don't know, Steve.
I do want to take, we don't have committee reports, we don't have a president's report, generally speaking anymore. I do want to take this time to, and I think I do this enough so people won't feel like, oh, well, him, and I know you all wouldn't say this, but Carlos has had a pretty busy week. Carlos Garcia. And I just, on behalf of the board, and I've done this with many of you in here, but I do want to recognize the very difficult job he has right about now. And your job is a very important one. And just from my observation, you've served us well in this very challenging week. And there will be more to come, I'm sure. But I want you to know, as they say, we appreciate you. And thank you for the good, hard, diligent work.
Yes, thank you. They are working you. Can I take a point of personal privilege just real quick? I just want to congratulate all of the graduates from the OASIS program. OASIS is just such an amazing, amazing program. If you guys have not gone, I encourage everybody to go down there, do a tour, but also just get to know them and the students. And I'm putting in a plug for their cafe, Sean, their cafe. And I don't know, you and East, yeah, you guys are competing, but there's a student cooked and the food is delicious. So I just want to congratulate the class of 2019 for OASIS again. So congratulations.
What are their cafe hours? Do they have hours that you know?
11:30 to 1, and I did ask them if they were going to still be open after the graduation. So they follow the same schedule we follow for the entire school district. So they're done on June 25th also.
Okay, all right.
You should congratulate all of the graduates because I don't think we'll have a meeting.
Vice President Elliott reminds me that would this be our last meeting
No,
before
next week.
graduation?
You can have a meeting next week.
No, I'm talking about to congratulate the graduates. We're going to be graduating the class of 2019.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, certainly I think we've divvied up those assignments, but Vice President Elliott makes a great point. We got a lot of kids, young folks graduating, and we look forward to those ceremonies. And I can tell you, in advance of saying on behalf of the board, congratulations, I was telling somebody recently, I graduated from a suburban high school, and the high school graduations were nothing even close to what we experience when we see our kids graduate. The quality of the journey really will make you cry and rejoice. So it is really not enough to say to the moms and dads, aunts and uncles, aunties and so forth, congratulations. We should also say to them, we are extremely proud of what you've been able to accomplish, notwithstanding the very difficult challenges. And by the way, Superintendent Nelms reminds me that, and I've tried to tell people this over the last few weeks, that our children and our parents are confronted with some significant challenges starting June 18th through the 25th. Those are when our students are engaged in Regents exams. I've said that this is, rather than talking about the future of 7 adults, this community should be talking about the future of 7,000 children. I am told that 7,000 children, grades 8 through 12, will be taking Regents exams between June 18th and June 25th. 1,000 of those, approximately 1,000 of those students are seniors. So we should not be talking about what's going to happen to Van or Willa or Commissioner Davis or Vice President Elliott or Commissioner Hallmark or Commissioner LeBron or Commissioner Shepard. It's really not important. And we should gather behind our children and our students and our families from June 18th to June 25th to make sure they get across that finish line, to make sure their futures are secure. You want to talk about what happens to the board on June 26th? Go at it. But this is not the time to do that. So let's send up some prayers, some thoughtful, positive thoughts for our students and our staff and our families that are trying to get these kids across the finish line. And we look forward to, as a Board of Education, joining you all and all those graduation ceremonies. I need a motion. I'm sorry, go ahead.
A point of
Absolutely.
I'm sorry. By your definition, this is not important. But I do want to report that I attended the New York State School Board Association Board of Directors meeting on this past Saturday. We are engaged in a search for a new executive director who we hope to be able to decide upon and present at the NYSBA convention, which will be right here in Rochester this fall.
Oh, nice.
Also, the New York State Caucus of Black School Board Members is hosting a panel discussion where hopefully our high school teens will be the panelists to discuss matters such as implicit bias and racism in our schools. And what they personally experience. I'm hoping that my son can be one of those panelists. And lastly, I want to thank Liz Hallmark. I have to appoint a member to the Resolutions Committee from the Big Five, and the Yonkers representative is resigning his seat on the Yonkers board, which suddenly means he's not available to serve. And Liz has agreed to step in and do it again. She has done it 2 terms in the past, and due to her departure, will never serve that role again. But I'm glad she's willing to do it for us this one more time. So thank you.
I do have some business that we do have to take care of. Commissioner LeBron, thank you for sending your email regarding your concerns about the retreat.
Thank you.
Yep. And those concerns were heard. I want to thank our new staff assistant, our executive assistant. What's your title? What's your exact title? Executive assistant. For trying to work through the schedules of people. She came up with NYSBA. This is for this retreat, by the way. The board is going to engage in a retreat with the new superintendent, a 2-day retreat, just to make sure we all understand our roles and have an appreciation and respect for each other. So we tried to come up with a date that worked for everybody, June the 17th and 18th, July 17th and 18th. It doesn't seem to work for 19th and 20th. Thank you. 19th and 20th.
I'm gone the 19th through the 21st.
That's right. And it didn't seem to work for everybody. Commissioner LeBron, you pointed out that you had some prearranged plans. So we should talk about that. I do think it's best that everybody attend. Now,
So
before you say that, though, I want to ask Ms. Scott, did NYSBA say they needed those particular days, or how'd that work?
Actually, Kalia scheduled this.
Kalia. Oh, that's right. Kalia did.
Well, let me just say that when we originally were talking about it downstairs, I did mention that I was going to be in Georgia for board leadership. I have training too. I'm going to be gone the 19th through the 21st. Then So I verbally shared that with you guys. Then Kalia did a Survey Monkey, and I noticed that that date was in there. I did the Survey Monkey, but then I put it back in writing. I'm like, okay, well, maybe, we were all talking about lots of different dates, and we weren't pinpointing a date. It was like, we're going to get a survey out. So I put it back in writing saying, hey, I'm going to be in Georgia for board leadership. All the other dates work for me, except this weekend. And then I got an email today saying, hey, we picked this weekend, the one you can't be at. And so I did feel some kind of way, and I also wanted to put it in writing because I don't want people to say that we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing to try to have a new direction and a new path with our new superintendent. I do believe we all should be at the board retreat with Terry, but I also don't want to be judged for not being there if you guys do decide to move forward with that date, because I was very upfront from the very beginning, and board leadership pays for my trip. They pay for our trainers, for all the board members that are going to be there. So this is not something that the district is paying for. They pay for all that. So just wanted to throw that out there.
So let me just say, Commissioner Vaughn, and I think it's important that we say this. I think that's the way we are going to become more effective. I mean, you express your concern. I think sometimes people, in the mad rush of trying to get stuff done, maybe somebody forgot. There clearly was no ill intent, but I'm in agreement with you. I think we all need to be there. And so I'm glad you brought that up offline. I didn't bring it up to raise any conflict, only to really just hold up what you're saying. And unfortunately, Kalia, who worked really hard to make this happen, unless somebody has any objection, I would like to ask Kalia to talk to Tim Kremer and the New York State School Board Association, see if we can, once again, try to find another date. Now, let me just tell you all, Kalia sometimes says, I don't mean to tell on her, but she says, sometimes people don't respond to the Survey Monkey. It is important that you respond, but again, unless there's some objection, and I know we seem to have a date, but I think you're right. I think everybody needs to be there. Terry needs that, we need that. So I'm not seeing any strong comments against asking Kalia to go at it again, but we'll do that, all right? Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I'll say that she added like every weekend in July, essentially. Those were the 4 weekends that she added. So if those dates don't work, I think we have to look at the first week in August potentially, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, I think what she was trying to do, and again, she's extremely diligent. I think she was trying to get it, because my directive to her was, let's get this done as soon as possible, that Terry and the board can work together, have an understanding as soon as he gets here, or shortly after he gets here. And I think there were some other commitments in July. The Harvard thing was going on. Yeah. So I think that complicated things a bit. So I think we'll ask her to shoot for August, and I'm sure Terry won't have any problem with that. Commissioner Hallmark?
Does it have to be a weekend? I mean, I wonder if for the retreat, we might do a Thursday, Friday or something. I mean, just if we're opening up dates again.
Oh, I could do that too. Let me just add that I would be okay with a Thursday and Friday and taking the time off work to do it.
Seems like the main thing would be the facilitators and
Well, I'm
Terry.
sorry, let me just say this.
Yeah.
Wednesday and Thursday, because my flight leaves Friday.
Okay.
And we start training, we're doing an evening training all day Saturday, and then the beginning of Sunday, and then we fly back out.
So, Wednesday and Thursday, you'll make sure you communicate what restrictions, everybody should communicate what restrictions you have as soon as you get some dates from her.
But if we do that week, that Monday through Thursday, I'm pretty open. I'll make myself available. I'm here. I can take the time off work.
Ms. Scott, do you think you could communicate that to?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thanks. So,
Would you be talking during the day? You mean all day? Because I wouldn't be able to take off work all day, 2 days in a row now.
so you were thinking during the day?
I was thinking during the day. Well, I don't know about.
I was
Commissioner
thinking
Hallmark.
half days or something, like it already is half days.
Well, again, the goal is to get everybody there, and I certainly understand what Commissioner Davis is saying. It's a challenge to walk away from work for many or some of us. So I wouldn't want to do that if that would represent some kind of hardship or challenge for anybody here. So we'll ask Kalia to go back at it and try to figure out. You'll share these comments with Kalia, right? All right. Okay, I think we're now ready to get that motion to go into executive session to discuss a particular.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, yes.
I'm sorry.
Yep,
I just
that's
want to
all right.
acknowledge the U of R students from the Urban Fellow Program that are here today. So, yeah, that's what. So they've been coming the last 2 years to learn about the school board, and they come around and hang out with us and observe the meeting. But they ask lots of questions and great listening skills downstairs about the school district and the school board. So I just want to acknowledge them and thank them for coming out tonight.
Yep, thank you. Now I need this, what we're about to do is there's this thing called executive session. There's certain things that we cannot talk about publicly, and we have to, by law, talk about them privately. So one of my colleagues is going to make a motion so that we can have a private conversation about contractual issues with our superintendent, and our attorney is going to have some conversation with us about some litigation issues, which we cannot discuss publicly. So right now, someone's going to make a motion to go into executive session to discuss it with our lawyers and to discuss contractual issues with our superintendent. That sound good, Carl? All right. All those, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. For you diehard fans, we'll be adjourning from downstairs on the second floor. Otherwise, good night.
I gotta leave by 8:30, guys. So
Cynthia.
I apologize, but. No, I'm like, wait a minute.